Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Hope City. My name is Peter Gawesky. I'm the pastor here. Glad you guys are here this morning joining us. We are in week 4 of a series that we've been calling Making Change, where we've been taking a look at a few different topics throughout the last 4 weeks. We started with the first week of less is more. We were saying that we have more and we don't necessarily need more in order to have more. And so we were adding meaning to our life. Week 2, we talked about how stress is bad. And I love asking this question because it's a pretty universal thought of, like, how many of you know that stress is bad? You can raise your hand. Like, yeah, we all know that. But I had the privilege of teaching that. So it was one of those, like, home runs. Like, everybody's going to walk out of here and be like, yeah, I know that. Yeah, I get that. Stress is bad. Then week 3, we talked about how giving is good. Giving is a good thing. And you've seen Operation Christmas Child out in the lobby there, all the way down into our elementary kids and pre-K kids. We've been teaching these different topics throughout this last month, that giving is good. And this past week, today, our kids are celebrating in a party because they've been earning different aspects of that party over in elementary. Throughout this teaching, they've been learning to save some, to spend some, and to give some. I witnessed this morning the cutest thing. There was two sisters that came in with a Ziploc bag filled with change. And they came up to my wife, Tiffany, and they were like, Miss Tiffany, I've got all this that I want to give to the church. And they came in, it's, all this change there, and they're getting it, they're understanding, because giving is good. Giving is good. And today, week 4, we're going to close out our series with the fact, this big idea that tomorrow matters. Tomorrow matters. It's not just all about today. But speaking of tomorrow, next Sunday, we're actually kicking off a new series that I'm excited to share with you guys. This series is called The Pursuit of Joy. I want you to be thinking about who you can invite to join you for this 3-week series, Pursuit of Joy. This past week, I invited one of my friends. Her mother, she just lost her father, actually. And so she was asking me, she knows I'm a pastor, and she's like, so how do I deal with this whole thing? Like, I've never lost anyone before, and her husband lost his dad, and she's like, but it's totally different. I said, good news. We're starting a series that I think might help you. I'd love for you to join us at church. If you're ever going to come to church, come. Don't come this week. Come the next week. You can come this week, but come the next week, because we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about how to have joy, even in some of the most difficult times of life. So maybe you know somebody who life hasn't turned out the way that they thought it was going to. Invite them to church. Maybe you know somebody who's going through some really, really difficult times. Get them to come out to church. This is going to be a great series of how do we pursue joy in our life. But let's continue in part 4 of Making Change today. Tomorrow matters. I'm so thankful for this series. I'm thankful for what it's doing in my own life. I've had several friends text me throughout the week like, hey, less is more, buddy. Like, if I'm starting to talk about something, and like, I sent one of my friends, good friend, a picture of this Jeep. I used to have a Jeep. I used to be cool. And I was like, this Jeep is sick. Right? Like, it was loaded. And what he does, do you know what he did? He texted me a screenshot of a quote that I gave in week 1. And he was like, no, we're going to say no to things for a while so we can say yes to things for the rest of our life. And I was like, yeah, back to you, buddy. So we've been applying some of these big ideas over the last 3 weeks, and it's been changing many of our lives because we want to make change in our life. But I think that as we draw down to the end of this series, one of the things that I've noticed is that many of us struggle with the now. Many of us have issues or anxiety. It's wrapped up in, like, what's to come. And we struggle with the right now. See, for us, I think we have this mentality of, I want it now. I got to have it now. You guys remember AOL? Remember this? How many of you remember this screen? If you're under, I don't even know, what would you be under, like 28? You wouldn't remember this? So anyway, you connecting to America online, like you actually dialed up. Do you remember this noise? You remember this noise right here? Oh, baby. I just brought all of us back to 1995. Like, instantly, this noise right here. What is that? That's you connecting to the information superhighway. It's a true statement. Maybe you were like too cheap for America Online and you went the whole like Prodigy or Juno, free email. Remember that? Juno. And anytime I see you guys turn in a new here card, if you're new here, by the way, we want to meet you. I'd love to meet you after service today out there. Bring that card with you. If you have an AOL.com email address, I'll give you 3 t-shirts. You can have all of the t-shirts. You're one of the originals. Man, you are an OG up in this joint. So today, if you remember that, what now? We're like, it's got to be faster, faster, faster. Dial-up was terrible. And now you're like, you're never disconnected from the internet. You live there. That's a place where you live. You know, for example, there's another time when I want it now. And this is, if I'm texting one of my friends, right? I want to see this. I want to see that. Like, right now. Why? Because I just texted you. You should respond to me now. I don't understand when you don't. We're good friends. Or if I'm streaming Netflix, ain't nobody got time for buffering. Like, what is that business about? Buffering means you need to call your internet service provider because they're not doing a good enough job. It should be now. And whatever it is that you're watching, I want to binge my way through that puppy. I'm not waiting for next week's episode. I want that episode now. We struggle with now. Now is this moment that we love to live inside of. And we worry about what's going to happen just after now. But we live in this now moment where we just want to keep going and keep going. See, I know I'm not alone in this. I've seen some of you. You're impatient at traffic lights. You can't wait in lines anymore. Like we can't do anything without like turning to our phone because now is taking too long. And so we fill the space with something else. And it's a problem. This is a problem. Because we no longer can have conversations that use the word growth, maturity, or future without becoming uncomfortable. We become frustrated when things don't happen overnight. We've been so conditioned to want things right now that it's really difficult for many people to actually think about tomorrow. See, one of the places we see this show up is in our relationships. We're frustrated that if we don't have a best friend right now, then we just give up. Some of you are in that dating relationship and you're like, why is there no ring on this finger? Come on, buddy. Like, it should happen right now. Well, actually, maybe you should take some time and get to know him, right? We become frustrated in the now. In fact, one area that we do ourselves a disservice is in the area of our finances. Because we live in our finances like everything has to happen right now. In fact, according to an article that I read this week, 78% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. 78%, that's 3 out of every 4 of you in this room are living paycheck to paycheck because we live inside of that moment right now. And I want to say for a moment that I understand that for some of us, it's almost an accomplishment to even do that, right? Like you're like, yeah, I'm living paycheck to paycheck, doing great, because you should have seen where I was. I know that there's so many people and many in this room that are living as a single parent, raising several kids, and you've got your college degree, you've done everything that you can, and for whatever reason, doing well is putting food on the table. And I don't want to heap any guilt on you. In fact, I want to be the very first person to tell you that I think being a single parent, being a single mom or a single dad, like you are the hero in this room. That it is an incredible task, an incredible responsibility that you have of raising the children that God has given you, and you're doing it by yourself. There are days when I'm like, I'm done, tapped out. I can no longer parent. And I do it with my wife. Like there's 2 of us in this. I can't imagine just one. Like, it'd be 12 o'clock, I'd be like, sorry, parenting is over till tomorrow, right? And so for those of you, I am not trying to heap guilt, but I'm telling you this, that there are, if we're really honest, there's a lot of us in this room who don't have to live paycheck to paycheck. The problem is that we have a today-centered mindset, and we're not actually thinking about tomorrow. Remember the phrase from about 6 years ago? We adopted and adapted this phrase, YOLO. right? You only live once, YOLO, and it was on t-shirts, it was everywhere. It was kind of the modern day Mr. Keating who was screaming to the boys in Dead Poet Society, Carpe Diem. And then they all got up on their desks and they lived for that moment, for that day, right? We translated it and we've trivialized that phrase and we've boiled it down to do whatever it is that you want. Have the greatest party because you only live once. The question is that, I get it, tomorrow can be hard to think about. And it can be overwhelming, but like it or not, it's coming. What are we going to do about it? See, we've trivialized the seizing the day often at the expense of tomorrow. I want to invite you to turn with me in your Bibles this morning because Jesus isn't silent about this issue. And this hasn't been an issue that's new to us. This isn't like you're not the first people to kind of open up life and be like, man, I'm not actually thinking about tomorrow. There's people who have been doing this for hundreds of years. And so turn with me to Matthew chapter 25, verse 14. That's page 677 in the Bibles around you. And Jesus tells us this parable. In this passage, Jesus tells us a parable. A parable was a way, Jesus telling a story that would deliver a point. Basically, he's kind of delivering this big point, a short story to make a point. And so starting in verse 14, listen to the story that Jesus tells. He says again, it will be like a man going on a journey. He called his servants and he entrusted his wealth to them. To one he gave 5 bags of gold, to another 2 bags, and to another 1 bag, each according to his own ability. Then this man went off on his journey. So what happens is the master divides up his money, and he heads off on a journey, an undescribed amount of time. In fact, the amount of time is not necessarily important right now. And so he heads off, he gives 5 bags out, 2 bags out, and 1 bag out, right? So you guys have 5, you got 2, you got 1. This is what happens. Verse 16. The man who received the 5 bags, he went out at once and he put his money to work, and he gained 5 bags more. Just pause here for a second. Mark, go back real quick. See, there's basically 2 ways to make money in this world, right? You can go out and work for your money, or you can take money and make it work for you. We would call that investing. And this is exactly what Jesus is telling us. He's saying that this guy right here, the guy with the 5 bags, he went out and put his money to work. He invested his money. He wisely placed it in a place where it would begin to work on its own. And he gained back 5 bags more. So also the one with 2 bags of gold, the next verse. He gained 2 more. He also went out, put his money to work, gained 2 more. But the man who had received 1 bag, he went off and he dug a hole in the ground and he hid his master's money. So this guy just goes out, digs a hole, throws that bag of gold in the dirt, and then covers it back over. 2 men took the money, put it to work, Scripture says. And do you see this? That 2 men invested their money. It brings us to our first point today. If you're taking notes in your program, we provide notes for you every single week. It brings us to the first point, that we need to maximize today to make the most of tomorrow. We need to maximize today to make the most of tomorrow. See, when God trusts you with something, you have a choice of what to do with it. You can do what many people do, and that's they spend all that they have. They consume it. They just kind of eat it all, or they shop it all away. Somebody sent this article to me. It's called the Target effect. That you walk in for no reason and you walk out spending $100. The Target effect. We've talked about that. And so that's exactly what we have. We have the choice. On the other hand, you can spend some, like we've been teaching our kids. You can give some, and perhaps you can save some or invest some. So but here's the thing. The beauty of the phrase YOLO, or you only live once, is it captured the attention and the imagination of an entire generation. And that generation has grown up, has gone to college, and has recently gotten married. That generation of you only live once is now in full-on adulthood, but still living as if they live under their parents' roof, which is why many of them do. See, there's an entire generation who's saying that tomorrow isn't promised. Live life to the fullest today. True statement. Tomorrow isn't promised. but that doesn't mean that it shouldn't be planned for. See, these three men had a decision to make. Would they maximize their today in anticipation for what tomorrow would bring? Each one of these guys made a decision of what to do with their master's money. Look what happened when the master returned. It says, after a long time, the master of those servants returned and settled accounts with them. The man who had received 5 bags of gold brought the other 5. Master, he said, you entrusted me with 5 bags of gold. See, I've gained 5 more. His master replied, well done, good and faithful servant. You've been faithful with a few things. I'll put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness. The man with 2 bags of gold also came, said, Master, he said, you entrusted me with 2 bags of gold. See, I've gained 2 more. And his master replied, well done, good and faithful servant. You've been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness. Then the man who had received 1 bag of gold came. Master, he said, I knew that you were a hard man, harvesting where you have not sown and gathering where you have not scattered seed. So I was afraid, and I went out and I hid your gold in the ground. See, here is what belongs to you. Basically, I'm giving it all back, all 1 bag of gold back to you. 2 men made money, and 1 man made nothing. And look at the master's reply. His master replied to the servant that dug a hole and put it in there. He says, you wicked, lazy servant. You knew that I harvest where I have not sown and gather where I have not scattered seed. Well, then you should have put my money on deposit with the bankers so that it would have returned, at least I would have gotten it back with some interest, right? He goes on, he says, so take the bag of gold from him and give it to the one who has 10 bags. For whoever has been given more for whoever has will be given more, and they will have an abundance. Whoever does not have, even what they have will be taken from them. Guys, don't miss this. The master said to the guy who only had 1, that lost his 1, do you know what he calls him? He says, you wicked, lazy servant. Try showing up to work tomorrow and your boss is like, hey, come here, I want to talk to you. You wicked, lazy servant. Imagine what that would feel like, right? But it was this guy, he didn't think about tomorrow. In fact, the only thing he thought about tomorrow was out of fear. See, he says, you weren't wise with what I entrusted you with. You did nothing with it. Do you know what the problem is here, though? The third guy actually has no value on tomorrow. He was afraid of it. He was unwilling to prepare for what might be tomorrow. And it was out of the future, out of the fear of that future, which leads us to our second point. And this point is, I know it's a nuance, but we need to stay future focused. We need to stay future focused because God uses our today to impact our tomorrow. So we choose to stay future focused. He's going to use the decisions that you make today to impact tomorrow. We all understand that. We would just call that responsibility. But what if responsibly we're planning for what might happen, right? There's always going to be another tomorrow. As long as there is a today, there is going to be a tomorrow. We have to stay future focused. In fact, I have a friend who owns his own business. And he and I have become good friends over the last year and a half, but mostly in the last year. And I know that his own business, he started this business from scratch, and this business that he owns, he's been slowly and surely developing it and growing it. And we get lunch pretty regularly, and one of the things that I always ask him is, I'm like, so what are you working on now? Because this guy is so future-focused that his business right now is setting him up for what's coming. He's constantly thinking ahead, constantly. In fact, when you diagnose the success of his business, it's really because he's done a great job with his business yesterday, and it means that he's consistently thinking about tomorrow and thinking about the future. Without a doubt, this friend of mine is future-focused. But look back at what the man did in the beginning of the story, the owner, the guy that had all this wealth. It says, again, it will be like a man going on a journey who called his servants, and he entrusted them with his wealth. He entrusted his wealth. He gave his wealth to these servants. Why? He gave him this stuff while he was on a journey. He didn't just give it to him for no reason. This wasn't actually a gift. This was, I'm entrusting you with what I have for a purpose, on purpose. He entrusted it with them so that they would do something significant with it. See, the principle here is this. Whoever is faithful with little will be blessed with more. Whoever's faithful with a little, and what was faithful to Jesus? See, Jesus in this story, he tells us that faithfulness is being defined by multiplying what they had. Whoever's faithful with little will be blessed with more. Whoever can take what you have and be responsible with it and make it grow will be given more. If you invest wisely, you might actually multiply what you have, and then you would have more. God may look at that and say, be faithful. You've been faithful. I can trust you with even more than that. See, when we realize that tomorrow matters, that it's important, it changes what we do with our resources today. Or the way that we're going to put it in your notes today, for our third point, is that tomorrow changes today. Typically, we flip that. We would say that today changes tomorrow. But I want to argue that tomorrow actually changes today. It impacts what we will do today. Let me share with you how this affects my life. And it affects my life on a weekly basis, this principle of tomorrow changing today. In fact, as pastors, there's this kind of common joke. It's not actually funny, but most pastors, we're not actually very funny people. But we say things like this, like, it may be Monday, but Sunday's coming. Like, it might be Monday, but Sunday is coming. And what we're saying is there is a freight train that is barreling into our world that if we don't get ahead of it, we're going to get crushed. Like if I showed up next Sunday morning, which I won't, but if I did, and I just totally was unprepared, or I didn't have enough time in the week, or I didn't discipline myself enough to sit down and think through and study and put thoughts together, I would stand here and be like, sorry. And some of you feel like that's what I'm doing now. I promise this is the best I can do. And so, it would be so painful. Tomorrow's coming. It may be Monday. Sunday's coming. The highlight of my week, Sunday night. It is the greatest span of time before Sunday morning comes again. Tomorrow changes today. And here's how it impacts my world. I know that because Sunday is coming, I know that by Wednesday evening at midnight, I have to have my message finished. If that means I have to stay up all night, I cannot go into Thursday without it being done. I know that means on Saturday, that Saturday evening, I got to go to bed early because I'm up here with the guys and the women at 6:30 in the morning setting church up. I know that Saturday evening, I actually have to say no to some invitations because I can't stay out late, because I got to be ready for tomorrow. I know that tomorrow changes what I do today. Do you know what I noticed, though? This is by and large a problem that I'm seeing in not only one generation, I'm seeing it in lots of generations. There are too many people that neglect this principle. Too many people that feel like, well, you only live once, so I'm going to live today to the fullest. I'm going to spend all my energy today. I'm going to spend all my money today. I'm going to spend all of my focus today. And instead of that, it means that tomorrow they've got nothing left. See, I was a youth pastor for 11 years. I know what it means to have nothing left tomorrow. Before I was a campus pastor, I was a youth pastor. And over the course of those years, I did countless all-nighters. Do you guys know what they are? Those are torture for youth leaders. So all of you youth leaders in the room, we're so thankful for you. And we can't wait for our first all-nighter. But I know what that means. We would take 100-plus teenagers around town. We'd plan activities to keep them busy from 7 p.m. all the way to 7 a.m. No sleep, nothing. Well, bowling, laser tag, all these different things for 12 hours. After playing hours of dodgeball, scavenger hunts, all kinds of things, midnight bowling, my Saturday was shot. I would come home from that, and I was good for nothing. And my Sunday was exactly the same. I poured everything I had into today at the expense of tomorrow. And some of you run yourselves ragged today to where you're no good for tomorrow. And this applies to what you give your time to, what you give your talent to, what you give your treasure or your finances to. You can run it ragged today and show up tomorrow and wonder where it all went. See, guys, I know I'm totally going to offend somebody. But we might have to put down the game controller and go to bed. Like, we might have to stop doing something that we love in order to be responsible for what is coming the next day. Like, tomorrow changes what we do today, if we want tomorrow to be meaningful. But I don't think there's anybody in this room that would say, man, I hope tomorrow is worthless. Like, I hope that it is like, I hope that I show up and I don't contribute a single thing to this world. Start making decisions today that make tomorrow matter. See, there's a formula I put in your notes that pretty much is guaranteed over time, and it works in many different arenas. But this formula, 2 out of 3 of these men actually got this principle, and they understood it. And it's this principle here. It says, money plus consistency plus time equals wealth. Money plus consistency plus time equals wealth. If we put a little bit aside, if we invest a little bit consistently over time, even in a marginal investment, money plus consistency plus time will equal wealth. And I'm not like a financial guru. I'm not a financial planner. I'm a pastor. But I know that this principle works because it doesn't only work in finances. It works in relationships. It works all over the place. See, let me tell you what this principle is all about. It's about faithfulness. It's about staying the course. It's about not giving up. It's about continuing to invest yourself. See, let me tell you too, because some of you are uncomfortable right now. Wealth is not a bad thing when it's used properly, right? I'm going to say it again. Half of Jesus' parables, half of them were about how to properly use money or to put money in its proper place. 1 out of every 10 verses in the New Testament is about finances. Clearly, finances are a spiritual matter. Clearly, you and I need to do a better job with our money. See, money is actually a problem when we put money in a place that is above God. See, loving money more than God is bad. In fact, that's called idolatry. Idolatry is anything that you place where God should be in your life. Anything that you put in the proper place of God. Anything that you allow to have all your attention, all of your energy, your love, your admiration. If that thing, if you look in your life and say, what is the most important thing in my life? If it's not God, it very well may be an idol in your life. And see, listen, so money isn't bad. What we do with money or what we allow money to do in our hearts could potentially be bad. But listen, we don't have to be rocket scientists to make this make sense. Some people teach a very simple principle. In fact, even CNBC has noticed this, that if you live by the 10-10-80 principle, what do? We're going to be blessed with 100%. We talked about this last week. God gives us 100%. The first 10% we tithe, we give back to God. Then we set 10% aside. We save it, we invest it, and over time, we live off of the 80% for ourselves. See, tomorrow changes today. Even CNBC is saying that is a pretty good way, a pretty solid way of growing your wealth or becoming stable. See, some of us just need to think a little bit smarter about tomorrow. We need to go back to our principle from week 1, where we're going to say no for a while, so we can say yes for the rest of our life. For example, let me ask you this question. I asked somebody this morning, and it was fun. So let me ask you guys, which would you rather have? Would you rather have $1 million? Like today, I will give every single person in this room $1 million. You can walk out into your car with $1 million. Some of you are getting really excited. You're like, I should come to church more often. You should. Or would you rather I give you a penny that doubles every day. From now and for 30 days, I'll give you a penny that doubles every day. You want $1 million now, or I'll give you a penny that doubles every day for 30 days. Which would you rather have? If you said, I want the $1 million now, you would have just shortchanged yourself $4.3 million. Because if you waited 30 days, if you were faithful to wait 30 days, on day 1, I give you a penny. Day 2, it's 2 pennies. This is Common Core math, right? So we're all confused. Day 3, it's 6 pennies. Day 4, 12 pennies, so forth. You get it. By the 30th day, it would be $5.3 million. But here's the problem. On day 7, we're ready to give up. Why? Because I'm only giving you 64 cents. 64 cents. Come on, man, I thought you were giving me more than that. You said this was going to be good. It takes time. Good things grow. They mature. Tomorrow matters. And it impacts the decisions that we will make today. See, when we understand that tomorrow matters, it changes what we do today. Some of you are saying in this room, you're like, well, I'm a single mom and I can barely do anything. It is so tough, and my world is paycheck to paycheck. Well, listen, that is the season that you're in right now. But you're in that season where you can't hardly do anything, but it doesn't mean that you have to be there forever. If you feel discouraged, maybe one day you're going to look back and you realize that that was then and this is now. And you're going to look at the difference between then and now and where God has you, and you'll be amazed at the way that God has been faithful to you. When you recognize that less is more, that financial stress is bad, that giving is good and tomorrow matters, and consistently over time, you start doing the right thing, guess what happens? God meets you in your faith. Little by little, you start doing better. Little by little, you start learning. Little by little, you start paying something off. Little by little, you're even more generous, and then you make your first investment, and little by little, your retirement starts to grow, and years go by. See, listen, today, it doesn't matter if you've got a whole lot of money or if your bank account is $100 overdrawn. The principle of what we're talking about applies to all of us in this room, every single one of us. See, notice in this story that Jesus says the master is concerned, he's not concerned with the amount of money, it was what was done with the money he gave. The question I have this morning is, what legacy are you going to leave behind? Like, what are you going to do with the things that God has given you? What are you going to do today to make tomorrow better? Not only for you, but also for your kids, for the world around us. We say around here, for Sarasota, which is a great way of saying that what we do today, we choose to do something today that is going to make Sarasota a better place tomorrow. And we happen to think that that person's name is Jesus. And the decisions that we make today, because of who Jesus is in our world, drives us to make tomorrow a better place. See, how can you make a change in your life that has ripple effects for Jesus for years to come? See, that's what we call a legacy. Let me tell you about my friend Dave. Dave was the executive pastor at my church in New Jersey. And Dave was an incredible man. He was well seasoned in his years. And Dave was an exceptional man who loved Jesus, and he understood that tomorrow matters. And it changed the way that Dave lived today. In fact, before Dave became the executive pastor at our church, Dave was the CFO of a multi-million-dollar company by the name of BG, British Gas. And it's safe to say that you don't get to that position without being exceptionally compensated. Now, if I introduced you to Dave today, you would never know that. If I took you into the parking lot or to his house, you'd say, that's a nice house, but you wouldn't expect him to be in that position. In fact, one of the things I found funny, and maybe sort of ironic, is that Dave and I shopped at the same car guy, Manny, on the corner, who sold wrecks, like old beat-up wrecks, and he would straighten them out, fix them up, and he would sell them cheap. And so Dave came time to turn his car in. It had been kind of miles were piling up. He had an old Honda Civic. And so I knew that he was getting ready to trade this thing in, and I said, Dave, what are you going to do? He said, I'm getting a new car. I was like, great, what are you going to get? A Honda Civic? Couldn't go wrong. I'm like, Honda's a great product. That sounds awesome, Dave. So a couple days later, I said, Dave, did you get your new car? He said, yeah, I did. I was like, oh, let me see it. He goes, oh, sure thing. We walk out into the parking lot, and there it is. it's a Honda Civic that's a year older than the one that he just gave up. In fact, he'd have power windows, and he went to, remember this? The crank windows. And I'm like, Dave, what gives, man? And he said, listen, Peter, you can either live and make a ton of loot, or you can leave a legacy. And I choose the latter. Because I want people that follow me in this life to be grateful for the decisions that I made while I lived it. See, it leads me to think and to wonder. See, Dave wasn't living for today. Dave was actually living for tomorrow. It's a decision that every single person in this room we're going to have to make from one time or another. Somewhere in life, maybe even today, you're going to have to answer the question of, is what I'm doing today, does it matter for tomorrow? And I would drive it a little bit differently. I would say, what is your legacy going to be? Or what are you living for? Maybe the best question, though, is what do you want your legacy to be? And start making decisions based upon the answers you come up with. See, you can change all of that right now. In fact, God may have given you some incredible finances. You've got cash. What are you going to do with that in order to honor God and bless other people? Or maybe you've got some incredible leadership skills. Well, what are you going to do with that, what God has given you, in order to honor God and bless other people? Or maybe you've got a lot of time right now. Well, what are you going to do with that time in order to honor God and bless other people? See, this morning, I want you to think about that. We've been talking about this concept of making change for the last 4 weeks. We've been talking about our legacy fund here at church. We've been talking about leaving a legacy and the things that over the course of the next 12 months that we're going to do here as a church to help our community, to help our kids grow, to help those that are hungry and thirsty in the world. And my question is, what legacy will you be leaving? I want to encourage you to think about that. I want to encourage you to partner with Hope City. Maybe to take a step in your generosity. Maybe for some of you, that step is just to start giving, to start tithing. For others of you, it might be to go above and beyond that and say, I'm going to give an offering. I want to leave a lasting legacy. See, God has entrusted all of us with so much. The question is, what will we do with it? Because tomorrow matters. We will make change today.